r/ask Reddit. What do you know about your workplace that you are not supposed to know? I work in education. My former chairman allowed a female employee to embezzle money from the school. I found out and blew the whistle. I assumed the woman would be fired and the chair would be demoted. Instead, the woman was asked to quit and given a package, and the chair stayed in his position because of his status as a coach. He proceeded to make my job very difficult for the next 5 years until he gave up the chairmanship to someone competent. The woman was his work wife and mistress, who also used to be his student at our school. That's really gross. Bureaucracy in school admin is extremely frustrating and unhelpful. Sorry you had to deal with idiots. Casino worker. There are a disturbing amount of suicides that happen on property. Almost none are reported to the public. My friend's mum did this. No gambling problems. Just long-term depression and the desire that she be found within 24 hours. And by a stranger. Boyfriend is a casino floor manager up on a reservation. He talks about this too. He helps out whenever he hears those calls for security, because it still has to go in his report. But it's very hush hush from what he's told me. Same thing with how many people have to be escorted from the property because they've been banned. The gambling addiction is real for a lot of people. I know the key code to a storeroom I'm not really supposed to. I use it for naps. I was going to say the exact same thing. Who are hidden naps? There is a guy in my building who uses my office as a secret napping spot. I have a 3-foot space between my cubicle wall and the real wall I use for storage. He wheels a rookie chair back there and falls asleep. I don't have the heart to tell him he snores, so I just put on my headphones and let the dude nap. He works like 16-hour days for 3 days and then is gone for a week. But I remember working 16 hours too and wanted a nap, so he can have it. Once, instead of receiving my paycheck, I received a file containing every paycheck of everybody in the company. Thus, I knew how much money everybody were making, what benefits they had, etc., including the CEO and high management. My boss was sleeping with HR head and Thea, both married, not to each other. Reported to HR. Oh wait. The CEO does coke before public speaking. Regular, diet, or zero? Diet by the looks of it. My boss stores beer in the server room because the temperature is always kept cool. Now that is genius. Is that for the team or just the boss? There is a beer crate in his office that's supposedly for the team, but alas, it's always empty, haha. The bed bugs in the hotel beds are not isolated to one room anymore. Scariest thing in this thread. Happens a lot. In cheaper places especially. I worked in hospitality at different levels and it's always the owner who ends up stopping any action on things like this. If they have an emergency fund, they can shut the wing entire floor/building down for a few days to fix it, but it usually requires new mattresses, sheets, etc. It's very pricey. If it's big name brand, then franchises can be pulled and all sorts of wacky shit. We took any reports of bed bugs very seriously. In Texas, it's required to have a giant, multilingual set of posters up the employees can see with detailed pictures. All of the guest complaints I had on them were false, luckily. People think seeing a cricket or water roach equals bedbug infestation, but it makes everyone tense up. The admin password for our laptops. The IT guy from 4 years ago never changed it. My first internship, I had a very restricted laptop that frequently needed the admin password to do anything. My boss kept it on a sticky note. In a meeting I memorized it. I never needed him to authorize something and my efficiency went through the roof. From my last job. Under no circumstances are you even to look at what's going on in the other half of the plant. What was going on? They were building an automated side. Got replaced by a robot a year later. They're slowly replacing machines at the factory I work at with automatic machines. They take up more room currently but do the same work as 4 machines in one, and use 1/6 the people. This factory can't keep people because society is changing and nobody wants to work 12-hour shifts. 2 days one week, 5 the next, rotating. I'm less than a month away from quitting and I can't ducking wait. The pay is the only thing that would keep me, but it's literally making me suicidal. My dad retired from there and my mom still works there. And like other people say in the plant, I'm not gonna be a lifer. The reason my boss won't replace the aging fleet of company cars for people below him is because he wasn't allowed to get the car he wanted, and now he's pouting and nobody is getting new cars. A Jeep Patriot isn't supposed to live to 200,000 miles. Reminds me of my old job in power line construction. Had a bunch of Toyota Land Cruiser. My car was ticking around 750,000 kilometers. Some of them had rolled over back to zero and kept counting up to 250,000. Owner wouldn't buy new vehicles probably because he was a cheapo. Lived rich himself but put as little into the company as possible. Not a current job but at a past job. My manager quit and the CEO gave me access to his emails so I could find information about how to do projects he only knew about. I started looking for all the salary information from all the co-workers on my team. Found out I was being paid significantly less than the person who previously had my position. I went and negotiated about a 40% raise with the CEO based on that information. How smooth was that conversation? I didn't tell him that I knew about the salary stuff. The manager left right when I was due for a raise anyway. Plus with his departure, I took over a lot of work but was not made manager. I started about 25% higher than I thought I was going to get. He told me he couldn't go that high, obviously, and we settled on an amount about 10% higher than I thought I was going to get. So I was pretty happy with it overall. That company was terrible to work for and our department wasn't valued at all. Purchasing and transportation. I paid for myself every year with what I saved the company. They paid dock workers more than me, even with the raise, and I was handling over $1 million in capital on a monthly basis. I ended up leaving about 6 months later when I was passed up for the management position where I was told I wasn't experienced enough and he promoted someone who was less experienced than me to the position. The reason there's high turnover is because management fired the one competent manager for being too kind. Don't you hate this? Why do so many establishments have to be total dongs to their employees for no reason? Like if you have a family emergency and get someone else to cover your shift, but they won't hear of it and demand you come into work, even though you secured coverage already. I worked for Shoe Carnival for about 3 weeks in high school. Besides the countless pointless rules they had, I left because I tried swapping a shift with a co-worker because he wanted Thanksgiving off to visit with his family, and I didn't want to work Black Friday, and even though we gave plenty of notice, they said no, without reason. So, I just didn't show up at 3 AM or whatever it was for those a-holes. My office purposely messes up people's wages to see if A, they're honest about receiving extra, or B, they can save money by not paying it all. It's such a scum thing to do, just glad it never happened to me. That must be illegal. At least I hope it is. I received too much at my first real job and that was my first real paycheck. Didn't really notice. Thought it was something with before and after taxes. After 2-3 months I caught on that this wasn't supposed to be this high. Reported it and they allowed me to keep the money already received and gave me an official raise in order to avoid having to lower my pay. That was generous of them. That at my zero drug tolerance workplace the CEO's executive assistant and the head of HR do coke on weekends together. So I know when they're not going out that weekend there'll be a workplace drug test the end of the next week. Old job. Those shiny new fume hoods and laminar flow cabinets didn't actually have working vents. That seems like something the government should hear about. Those things aren't just for decoration. Actually, I've seen a fair number of biotech startups that will build out a lab for show while working to get more venture capital invested in their business. They usually have a smaller, dirtier workspace that's actually being used. Often have their fanciest equipment in the showroom and usually allow a limited amount of work to be done in that room. If the fume hoods aren't actually needed in that room, they for sure won't go through the expense of hooking them up. That's about $50,000 plus of infrastructure that investors won't be seeing. At a place that I used to work I was the only person with any IT smarts. I set up the spam filter to forward to my inbox any maybe emails that it caught, which I would then look at and forward on if they weren't spam. On 2 occasions I was forwarded an email receipt for Viagra which one of my colleagues had purchased with his work email address. I just deleted them rather than forward on because it's just easier that way. My boss is faking a recovery program. hit her ex-husband with a car, and is never going to change or get fired because she's the owner's daughter who can't do anything about her. My former boss, who is married, had sex in his office with multiple employees. Shit leadership skills. He came from a naval background, didn't have a bloody clue what he was talking about unless it was Navy stuff. Office supervisor had duck buddies in the office. He would let them get away with murder in exchange for sexual favors. He would always talk about how much he got paid compared to everyone else. Never wanted to help anyone or give a shit. The entire department is a complete shit show. The good bunch of people who made the place decent either left or constantly got ducked over. Hard workers never got a thank you. Not really something I'm not meant to know, but more something the public aren't meant to know about an old place of work. The vegetarian roasts aren't vegetarian. At a previous job we had our manager get fired right after returning from maternity leave. She was replaced by the guy that she trained to fill in for her while she was gone. She sent a company-wide email with the pay rate of everyone from the plant manager on down. It was a shit show. A lot of pay rates were wildly different in management, supervision and maintenance. There were talks of work stop strikes and slowdowns, even threats of unionizing. I believe that this one act led to the eventual closure of the plant. It was a crazy time. A friend of mine worked for a video coding editing company. Their financial person went on a long honeymoon with her time off, so she trained someone in the essentials to keep the business going while she was gone. Boss hangs around trainee while financial person is away. Thinks that is 100% all the financial person does. She returns with an offer for a 20% pay cut due to her limited role. Boss says he'll replace her with trainee if she refuses. Financial person laughs it off and easily gets another job with her degree in accounting or whatever. Trainee is quickly over her head with past dues billing payroll. Company goes out of business a year later. I found out my co-worker on a lower position was getting a few $1,000s more in salary than me. She told me her wage when she left the company, wrote up a polite but stern email to my boss asking her to not only match it but increase by a couple of K, because I did have a higher position after all, and she did. Sometimes knowing things can be a benefit. That our CEO's speeches are actually written by low-level grunts makes me wonder about all the inspiring leaders' speeches of the past. By jumping from department to department over the years, at my old job I knew a combination of things that no one person was supposed to know. I knew alarm codes, vault combinations, locations of keys, passwords, schedules, location and functionality of cameras and security systems. Led to a lot of idle daydreaming on bad days of things I could, but never would, do. That the third floor isn't complete yet. A colleague told me how he was reprimanded for talking about it to people not in the know. I wasn't in the know. So I used to work for an NGO in a government-funded program. Shortly before I quit I found out that the higher-ups were actually taking government-funded money that was meant for our program and using it on their own non-government funded programs. So essentially they were stealing millions of dollars from the government. If we have to clock in for work at a time when we are not technically on the schedule, we use what's called a red card. For example, let's say I'm scheduled to 9 on a particular day and I got called in early. If I tried to punch, I would get an error message. The only people with these red cards are managers, store manager, perishable manager and non-perishable manager. Well, I know the code for the red card, so theoretically I can punch myself in without needing to get it from a manager. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.